Siemens, sparking innovation in a giant electrical corporation. Werner von Siemens founded his company in 1847, based on his design for an improvement to the electric telegraph machine. He teamed up with a precision toolmaker, Johann Halske, and they established the Telegraphenbauanstalt von Siemens und Halske, with 10 employees, in a small courtyard factory in Berlin. They were lucky in 1848 to win a contract to build a new telegraph line, then the longest in Europe, from Berlin to Frankfurt, which was successfully opened in 1849. They never looked back. Today, Siemens is a global business, still drawing on its heritage of electrical engineering, but active in many fields, including medicine, energy, transportation, smart cities, and increasingly, services. It employs 293,000 people in over 40 countries and had a turnover in 2020 of around 57 billion euros. Its vision for the future includes continuing the transformation from a product-led business to one with an increasing service model. For example, in integrating and supporting the many devices across the Internet of Things, which it also provides in its wide range of industrial automation products. So, what's its innovation claim to fame? Well, this firm is yet another of the 100 Club, companies which have survived and grown through innovation over the past 100 years or more. Its early years were characterized by many major product breakthroughs, and they've established a strong brand name around the world with a reputation for quality and innovation. Increasing pressure on their traditional markets and high competition in the new technology fields which it entered, such as telecommunications, forced a realization that its old and somewhat bureaucratic structures and procedures needed to be revamped around a capability for reinvention. They appear to have been successful in doing so, maintaining their core businesses but growing strongly in new fields like computers and medical instruments through opening up to multiple sources of new, different innovations. At the same time, they've embraced the open innovation approach, working hard to build an effective innovation ecosystem within and beyond their boundaries. But their successful track record in innovation isn't an accident. There's a consistent strategic commitment to it. Since their earliest days, they recognized the importance of doing their own research and building competence. Increasingly, this has also been fueled by extensive external links to other firms, scientific institutes, universities, and other players. They currently have 40,700 people working in research and development, representing around 14% of the total workforce. And they invested 4.5 billion euros in research and development in 2020, representing close to 10% of turnover. They hold close to 43,000 patents and continue to add to their stock of knowledge. In 2020 alone, they filed about 2,740 patents and submitted around 5,120 invention disclosure reports. That's equivalent to 23 inventions per day. So how do they organize and manage innovation? From their earliest days, they built a strong foundation in product development based on deep technological roots and a high research and development spend. Recent years have seen a shift towards leveraging the wide knowledge base which the company's built up. As one interviewee put it, if only Siemens knew what Siemens knows. There's also been a recognition that growth through innovation will depend on carrying out a deliberate search for non-current products and enabling technologies, looking in unexpected places, and in keeping the units which take those ideas forward as small and focused as possible, rather than trying to run them through the large and somewhat staid organization of the present. An early example of the success of this approach to increasing the volume of ideas took place in their medical division in the 1990s, where in the first year of their new program, 450 project ideas emerged, 70% of which came from outside the division. These led to 11 business plans for new ventures and 3 major product fields. By the late 1990s, after the process had been running for 5 years, the company had around 1 invention per day and 2/3 of their $5 billion sales being generated by products that had been introduced during the previous 2 years, 50% of the ideas for which came from outside. So how do they handle innovation strategy and give it the leadership it needs? A number of key enablers are worth flagging. First of all, there's a strong cultural value around innovation, a belief in it, grounded in the company's long history. But this is now being matched by a new complementary value around entrepreneurship. There's a willingness to reinvent and to let go, which is a strong feature of recent history where the company have divested itself of some key areas. And there's a change in the underlying vision. There are specific and targeted change initiatives to increase the volume of ideas feeding into the innovation process. There's resource allocation to allow for slack, curiosity-driven working, effectively giving permission to try new things out. And there are internal venture funds to allow progression of new ideas along parallel fast tracks to the mainstream. How do they enable their innovation process? Well, the company has an effective and well-established process for do better, incremental improvement innovations. But it's interesting to explore the systems which they've put in place alongside these to enable them to find and exploit radical, do different innovations. And mechanisms here include active search for new and different knowledge to complement the in-house base, deliberately looking for those which don't fit the current product technology portfolio. It's a kind of parallel search approach. There's training and the use of change agents who have the task of turning new knowledge garnered through these networks into live projects. It's a kind of innovation product manager role. There is use of a technology accelerator and technology to business centers approach as a way of structuring a fast track for taking such ideas into action. There's extensive spin-in and a spin-out system for converting innovative ideas into development projects via non-traditional routes, more closely modelled on the world of individual entrepreneurship and startups. There's emphasis on a rapid execution process designed to move things through quickly and enable fast failure and rapid learning. There's the use of alternative channels and networks for market research, running in parallel with their do better mainstream innovation structure. They use new innovation tools, approaches like mapping innovation fields to explore future scenarios, and they use road mapping to define technology pathways. There's emphasis on idea push approaches to increase the volume of internally driven ideas into the system. An example here is the Impulse program and its follow-ups, a regular process which attracts ideas and funnels them via a selection board made up of cross-division representation. Around 25% of these kind of ideas are taken forward, so there's continuing flow. Both impulse type and mainstream approaches generate large volumes of ideas, but the problem is often one of incubation and development. To help deal with this, Siemens has a complementary venture arm and incubator units, an in-house startup system for new businesses where seed capital, personal skills development and so on can be moved along. In turn, these are passed to innovation task forces, dedicated groups recruited from across divisions, typically around 5 people, and given a venture capital budget to work up a business plan for a new product field. At the go, no-go decision point, the project is launched or transferred to another division to launch or spun out to the outside. But here an equity stake is retained to ensure a return of funds for the venture capital pot. There's also concern about knowledge management. As they say, we're very careful what we let out of the door. Another alternative to spin-outs is linking to satellite firms. Local high-tech small firms which can act as innovation incubators themselves. These have the advantage of retaining an entrepreneurial small firm culture, but they also have the access to the knowledge and resource base of a giant organization like Siemens. And there's a dedicated team of scanners whose role is to search and transfer knowledge across Siemens and in from universities, research institutes, other firms, and so on. During the past decade, Siemens has, like other large firms such as Procter & Gamble, worked hard to open up its approach to innovation, drawing in not only external players, but also reaching across its global workforce to leverage their ideas. In its current form, the Siemens Innovation Ecosystem is a powerful resource for finding and deploying ideas and for moving them to value creation. What about building an innovative organization? Well, over its 170-year history, the company's learned a great deal about the type of organization which can foster entrepreneurial thinking and channel it into new products, services, and processes. Some of the key lessons they've learned include the belief that hierarchies kill innovation. This has led them to a deliberate attempt to get away from vertical structures, which typified the past, and move towards flat, knowledge-mixing structures. They use a knowledge culture as their new organizing model, rather than stressing the efficient use of key resources as their key principle for structuring the organization. The structures also moved from a regional focus to one which has a strong customer sector focus. They've tried hard to allow for empowerment and autonomy through giving people slack time, a little of their own time in which they can explore new ideas. They've introduced idea generation and suggestion processes like the impulse approach, and they've offered incentives for innovation based on participating, not on the value of the final ideas. But for those ideas that are taken forward, there is the incentive of playing a major role in the subsequent development, which engages commitment and championship of ideas. And they've made considerable efforts to reach out and connect across their global workforce to open up a powerful internal innovation engine. What about the challenge of building rich linkages and networks? Well, here again, they've worked very hard. There's been a great deal of creating internal, cross-division, cross-functional, cross-discipline networks which can bring different knowledge sets together in communities of practice. In parallel, they've been setting up external networks. A number of staff, not just in marketing, are empowered to initiate a process of intense customer contact, what they call hot making, to identify and generate new possibilities. The marketing team are also heavily involved in tracking lead users, but also actively searching out new customers through this hot making process. The idea is to generate leads for R&D via a process of learning from and with customers. And sales teams are rotated to bring different perspectives to bear. Staff also work as hit teams. They target conferences, scan academic and other journals, look at competitor firms, all sorts of things which involve scanning actively and then coming back to report in a formal way, building a stronger technological intelligence system. They have a targeted search for new and complementary knowledge sources via strategic alliances, joint ventures, and so on. And they pay particular emphasis within these joint ventures on working with high-tech small firms, who are then allowed to retain their identity and character. They're not instantly absorbed into the mainstream culture and procedures, but are incubated, allowed to grow and continue along their entrepreneurial trajectories. And in particular, Siemens have developed their own version of open innovation, building on a number of powerful approaches and tools to help create an externally focused innovation ecosystem. Well, lastly, what about learning and capability development? Well, this is a company that's recognized it needs to change a large firm culture, but has decided to do so not in a single hit. Instead, they've made extensive use of a learning laboratory approach, where good practices evolved in one division are then transformed out into others, so the new approach spreads organically. Central to their continuing success is a process of reflecting on the past, looking critically at what worked in terms of innovation routines, but also about what hasn't, or what worked for them in the past but now needs to be updated. And they've explored the need for new routines, adding systematically to their capability for managing innovation.